Today is the day all Ferrari fans have been waiting for a long time. It is of course the Mugello filming day, from which Ferrari will be trialling out the newly revised SF-25 rear suspension, which they hope a lot of the issues that they've had and been plagued by will be completely, or for the majority, fixed moving forward into the second half of the season. And of course, both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc will be sharing filming duties and of course testing duties across the next 2 days. Now for a quick and brief recap of what's been going on with Ferrari and their original spec of rear suspension, let's do that now. So essentially Ferrari have had numerous issues with regarding the SF-25, and the majority of that stems from the original concept of rear suspension, which they've used for the whole season. Now, what has happened is Ferrari have had to raise the ride height because of plank wear on certain occasions. That is because the rear suspension just does not have the rigidity to be able to sustain the compression on the circuits as a result of the overall load and downforce that they have at the peak of performance. And this also impacts them in the races, particularly at the start when they're full of fuel, that 100 kilogram or just beneath that in terms of limit. And the pace with comparison to their rivals once the fuel burns out gets better and better. So it's about fixing those sorts of issues as well. Now, how exactly are Ferrari going to bring about these changes that they need to make to lower the ride height across the rest of the season? Well, they are doing multiple changes, both structurally to the new rear suspension as well as some things we will not be able to see. These include new geometries and new materials, with the arrangement of the swing arms having been redesigned to optimize the rear dynamics and improve platform stability, particularly with what I mentioned in terms of the compression and the body roll of the car during the high-speed corner phases across a circuit. This will involve a significant change in the rear axle layout, and it won't be easily visible to us. And there's also another interesting thing with regards to these 2 days of testing. Today, this Wednesday, Ferrari are using the SF-23 with the SF-25's current suspension layout as the basis, the starting point in terms of collecting and gathering data. And tomorrow, Thursday, with the duties split between Hamilton and Leclerc, Ferrari will be using the new rear suspension on the SF-25, from which Ferrari have set up a very rigorous kind of test in terms of the setup they will be running throughout their 100 kilometers of testing around the Mugello circuit. And this is a kind of test that they want to run to make sure they can run the car as low to the ground as possible. Now, very briefly, why did Ferrari choose Mugello over that of, say, their private racetrack or Fiorano? Well, quite simply, the Mugello circuit enables Ferrari to have a better baseline in terms of the complete different speed ranges of corners around the Mugello circuit. There is far more differing speed ranges than, say, to that. If we compare it to Fiorano, Fiorano has literally no high speed corners, it's all slow and medium speed. So for Ferrari, with the majority of their issues coming at high speed corners because of the compression on there, that is of course why they've chosen to move the testing day, or the filming day rather, to Mugello, which is more in line with the majority of Formula One circuits, particularly as this is and was a circuit F1 used to race around. Now, with regards to this very kind of rigorous setup that they're going to be running for the rear suspension, of course we don't know what it is, but I think what we can state from within this time frame of this next 100 kilometers, it is all about making sure they're running the car to the extremities that they possibly can. So I think they will start off with the most extreme setup they can choose to use for this new rear suspension on the SF-75 to see whether it can cope with the rigors that come from running it so extreme. And say if they find on the initial feedback from both Leclerc and Hamilton that that's not the case, they will dial back the extremeness until they find that kind of correct balance and working window from which they don't have these issues. So it could be something of a trial and play around with the setup to see how things go. But of course, Ferrari hope and aimed with this new rear suspension to run it to the extremities that they possibly could. Now, if that is the case and things go as Ferrari hope, I think we can expect very, very good things from them, particularly with regards to us heading to Spa in a couple of weekends' time at the commencing of the second half of the season. Now, even before this rear suspension, Ferrari were very excited to go there. There's a lot of high-speed corners where they don't have so many issues because, of course, with Spa being practically long straights and high-speed corners with very few medium and low speed, you can really kind of set up the car within one working window, one operating window in terms of the speed range of corners. There's less compromise that has to be placed on the car in terms of setup as a result of that. And I think Ferrari were going to have a very competitive weekend regardless of this rear suspension. So imagine if this suspension that they've brought to Mugello works as they've wanted and it's unlocked a huge amount of performance, or maybe 1 to 2 tenths or 3 tenths even. Who knows what Ferrari have kind of hidden within the peak of their downforce and load. Now, if they could add that on to the already kind of upturn in performance we saw in Silverstone, where they were just half a tenth off from getting pole position, that would put them in the ballpark of getting a very, very fantastic result in Spa before the updated floor then arrives in time for Hungary, because there is a couple of updates coming. One is, of course, the suspension, but even more importantly, the floor, because there is belief within the Ferrari camp this floor is not going to favour Hamilton more than that of Leclerc. Hamilton is presumed to have a more struggle with regarding this new rear suspension with the current floor, and therefore they've brought and designed a new specification for Hungary to help alleviate those problems with regarding Hamilton and the general feel he wants out of the SF-25 in its newly updated guise. So fingers crossed for Ferrari and just Formula One in general. I think if this works, it's going to put them right in the ballpark of being highly competitive, regardless of, say, Red Bull's upgrade package that they have for Spa, or what, say, McLaren or any of the other big teams like Mercedes bring to Spa and beyond. I think what we've seen, Ferrari can have a very kind of general performance trend moving forward, whereas I think Mercedes and Red Bull, they're still going to have dips throughout the second half of the season where they're sometimes highly competitive and sometimes very much the opposite, completely out of the working window in terms of setup and drivability and ride height and all the other kind of variable factors that inevitably can come into play, such as the weather and the tarmac heat levels and all of those sorts of things. But all in all, let's hope Ferrari have a car from which this new upgrade allows them to extract a higher level of performance for the SF-25 for both drivers to attack the second half of the season.